blesse mon cœur d'une langueur monotone. Je répète, blesse mon cœur d'une langueur monotone.
Hey everybody, Dutch Sense here. 2:53 a.m. Central Time on Friday, May 1st, 2015. And I'm pulling another all-nighter, got my coffee right here. No joke on that. And now's a good time to get into the earthquake update for the next 7 days. And this might be a long video, it might take up a lot of time, but it's going to be worth the time for you guys to watch, because we've got some serious activity going on around the planet. And let me just go ahead and show you what's happened over the last 7 days. Okay, and this is 4.0 and greater internationally, and 2.5 and greater in the US. You're not seeing the activity that struck at the English Channel, which were a series of 3.0 earthquakes, and you're not seeing activity across Africa. And USGS is going to show us everything 4.0 and greater internationally. They don't show us the smaller events internationally. However, this gives you a great idea of what's happened. We've seen a tremendous uptick in activity. Globally, well, we've seen at least, 4 6.8 earthquakes, 3 of which are associated over here in Nepal, 1 of which just struck yesterday in Papua New Guinea. You see the earthquake raised high off the globe here. The higher these are off the planet, the deeper they are into the earth. This is an earthquake 3D feature. And at the start of the week, 6.2 kicked off up here in Vancouver, British Columbia, and a 5.5 right along the Gorda Escarpment, which you don't see here now. But now, yesterday, they've announced that a new volcano is erupting off the coast of Oregon. And we also saw a series of steam plumes erupt out of Oregon, Northern California, also Nevada, and Southern California. So now, in the last just few minutes, a borderline 4.0 earthquake just struck along the edge of the North American craton. And if you look at the last 7 days, that's no shock. Okay, when we see another borderline 4.0 earthquake there, that's the fracking operation, but the other operations in the area moved, as well as dormant volcanoes up and down the west coast, the steam plumes that I just told you about, the new volcano erupting here off the west coast, and the earthquakes that happened at the start of the week. 3.7, now downgraded to a 3.4, struck downtown Los Angeles. We were expecting a 4.0, 3.7 hit. Okay, that's within the range of acceptability, but it definitely struck right in the area we were watching for. New Brunswick, Canada, also, look at that, 2.5 struck there, right in the area we were watching. Series of 2.0 struck down the East Coast, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and those were back-to-back over the last several days. Lone 2.9 down here at the Colorado, New Mexico border, Trinidad. Also, we were watching for that to happen this past week, and it occurred. So, guys, what can I say? All the areas we were watching showed movement. And that includes down here in Chile, today, another large volcanic eruption occurred at Calbuco volcano, which the media is not talking about. So, what can we expect over the next 7 days? To get a better idea, let's look at the last 48 hours of earthquakes. Alright, now we're looking at the last 48 hours. You can see the deep asthenosphere 6.2 magnitude earthquake. The 6.8 at a shallow level was a response to the previous earthquakes that had happened a few days prior. So that means there's going to be follow-up movement sometime in the near term over the next 7 days, again in the area to the west-northwest of this deep 6.2. So look west of the 6.2, northwest of the 6.2, somewhere out here in this region, we're going to have to see shallow, large movement greater than the 6.8 that struck here, which was a result of the 5.0 earthquakes that struck in the asthenosphere deep in the earth earlier in the week. So first we saw 5.0s, that led to the 6.8 here, then we saw 6.2, that's going to lead to another earthquake right in this area again. Now that's not the only area to watch. That really is a small little area though, right off the eastern shores of Papua New Guinea going as far east as Fiji. We're talking about right in this region here, someplace in the next 7 days is going to see a large earthquake in this region. Also to the northwest of here. So that puts it down to South Japan, yet again, South Japan to Taiwan, small region right in here. We had a 5.0, 5.2, 4.5. The 4.5 struck right in the area within a couple miles of the spot that showed that dramatic rise, the seafloor rise and the ground collapse, however you want to call it. That's the area that saw the 4.5. So a lot of movement up here to the north. That means to the south has to show compensation. Haven't seen any large earthquakes strike in the Philippines. Well, now in several, over a couple months now, we really haven't seen anything large strike in Philippines. We need to be on watch in Philippines. This is definite over the next 7 days because all the areas have shown movement. We're already looking south towards Japan. So southern Japan already primed. The area to the south completely silent, which means pressure has built. Again, when you look at the earthquakes over the last 7 days, let's turn these down. Look at the area that hasn't shown any movement but should show movement. From Vietnam east into Philippines, somewhere right in here. Again, that narrows it down. I mean, there's a lot of areas to watch, but the areas that should see large, shallow movement are pretty small. So here and here, okay? Now, we have to also keep watch for additional deep asthenosphere earthquakes that could switch things up over the next few days. So we've seen a lot to the south, no deep movement to the north. If you see deep movement to the north, that means we need to watch to the west. So again, from the west, northwest of the deep movement, we need to watch for shallow compensation movement. Last week, before this large 7.8 hit that killed 5,000 people, there were deep earthquakes that happened here near Japan. I issued an earthquake warning saying I didn't really understand too much about the tectonic plates over here in Russia-China border region, but that we needed to watch along the Russia-China border somewhere here for a large earthquake. And what actually happened was at the China-Nepal border, a large earthquake struck, and that was actually west. Here, let's get this more on a equatorial center here. Okay, so the area west of the deep asthenosphere earthquake showed movement, and I thought it would be northwest, and that's because the Pacific plate shows northwest. So the new rule that I'm applying, and that I think geologists are now applying if you go read the reports, that when earthquakes happen here in Japan and down into Central Asia, it translates west to the sub-Asian continent along the Himalayan mountains. So this past week, 30 to 50 feet rise in Japan, or collapse, depending on which way you want to talk about it. The professionals then came out 2 days later and announced that a 30 to 50 foot movement is still expected here in Nepal. 30 to 50 foot rise here in Japan, 30 to 50 foot movement expected here in Nepal. It took them 2 days to figure that out, and we've been talking about this for the longest time, guys. So that nails it down here in the West Pacific. 2 main areas to watch over the next 7 days. If you go west, we're talking about, well, again, the professionals are now saying that we need to expect movement here in Nepal, but the professionals are always, I swear to God, they're one step behind on all this stuff, guys. We need to watch more west near Turkey, and that's because the pressure translates westward from these deeper, larger earthquakes, and that caused the shallow movement here. Well, guess what? There needs to be compensation movement to the west now because this area showed movement. While they're expecting 33 to 50 foot of movement here, I would more expect it near Turkey, let's say. And this takes us back to 2011. And if you go back to 2011, you'll find out that in 2011 was the last time that this volcanic ridge erupted here off the shores of Oregon. And it was the last time that we saw big time swarms in Hawaii with big lava flows building up at Kilauea. That's going on right now as well. Also go back to 2011, Sinabung erupting, multiple volcanoes erupting out of the blue without any warning. That's happening again now. Go back to 2011, fracking earthquakes going through the roof, happening again now. And again, we had denial by the media, happening then, happening again now. So, in the other areas around the planet, let's try and get an idea of what to watch for elsewhere. So, we've already nailed down West Pacific. We've already also nailed down Sub-Asia going into Turkey, where I would personally watch myself. Europe, we saw the movement happen here in England, the 3.3. To get a better idea of the European movement, let's go over to the EMSC. I hope people can repeat this process, understand how one earthquake is translating across a region and leading to another earthquake elsewhere. So you can see here this cluster, this is normal, okay, when we see activity throughout this region, but the cluster also lends credence to the fact that we're probably going to see some kind of large movement in Turkey over the next 7 days because of the cluster point down here to the south. Now you can see this 2.7. This is the leftovers from the 3.3 that struck in the English Channel right along the shores of France. That's again because the movement down here to the south last week pushed up here finally and caused an earthquake on day 7 of the earthquake forecast watch for the region. You can see over here to the west, Azores. Those 2 earthquakes, they started out as 4.0. There were 2 other earthquakes this past week after the Nepal quake. Within just an hour or 2 of the Nepal earthquake, we saw the earthquake pressure transfer west and cause 2 back-to-back earthquakes out here in the Azores. That's happened again now. Also, going south to the Canaries, you see the lone 2.5 down there. Again, just showing you signs of stress pressing west. So what does this mean? Well, if we see a large earthquake in Turkey, that's going to reset for here in Europe, and we'll start to see pressure build down here to the south again. So that might lead all the way up to North Italy, right along the southern Swiss border, somewhere up here in the north boot heel of Italy. We might need to watch for a larger earthquake, again after the movement that would happen in Turkey. So the reset switch has been hit here in Europe, down to the south, have to watch out, and the area in question is the area that's already showing heavy movement. If you go back to last week, we saw this movement more up to the north. So it's translated back. Again, that's based on the earthquakes here at the Himalayan, Indian, China border that just showed so much movement. Now let's get back over to the USGS real quick, take a look at the last 7 days, wrap up this forecast. So we nailed it down in Europe. We have to watch just a small region. Again, I guess you could call it Turkey, Europe. Somewhere in Turkey, and going over small little region again, North Italy, North Boot Heel, right there. Okay, so then also in the United States, we need to watch along the edge of the craton. Now that we've seen this movement here in the US, new volcano erupting here, big movement this past week up in the Pacific Northwest, multiple 4.0s across the edge of the craton. That means over the next 7 days, we're going to see this happen again. And we're going to see it translate south to larger earthquakes down here in Southern California. Now, I was looking for a 4 to 5.0 to strike. That 3.7 struck, got off lucky this time. Again, anything over that 4.0, people start to really feel. So we're going to have to watch further to the south, and that's all this volcanic, dormant volcano movement. Undeniable. This swarm here happened at a dormant volcano. Okay, these 3 earthquakes, look at the screen right now, you will see it. Dormant volcano at each location. So we need to watch out for possible larger movement to the south. And this would be south of Los Angeles, so San Diego to Salton Sea. Really small area to watch down here to the south. Up here to the north, it's much more broad. Now that we know there's an undersea volcano erupting right here where this point is, okay, literally right where the point meets, that's where we're talking about the new undersea volcanic rift. Well, this lets us know we're going to see another series of at least 5.0 earthquakes, most likely another repeat of what we saw last week, at least. So we'll have to watch that region for the next 7 days. And if you don't know what happened last week, we had a 6.2 up here to the north at Vancouver Island and a 5.5 along the Gorda Escarpment, new volcanic eruption right in the middle. So that nails down our area to watch up here to the north. Now people might say, oh, Cascadia might move all the time. No, we haven't seen multiple 6.0, 5.0 earthquakes up there in months. And so this indicates, again, the volcanic pressure that's showing at all the different volcanoes showing eruptions and the new volcanic eruption on the west coast. Look, this is the time where you need to be prepared now, because we're looking for a repeat because of the other stuff that's going on of a 2011 type scenario. When the media is talking about, hey, this all happened in 2011, this volcano erupted in 2011, the last time we saw the eruption here off the coast of Oregon, 2011, that lets us know a 2011 repeat's happening. Let's not bury our heads in the sand this time and actually start to make some preparation plans. So, in other words, if you are an emergency manager, you need to be on heightened alert. If you manage a nuclear power plant, you need to be on heightened alert only in the areas that could possibly see large-scale movement. And we've narrowed it down. So there's only two other areas that we haven't talked about yet. That's Central America and South America. Well, yesterday, going into today, another huge eruption at Calbuco volcano. All right, that's relieving the pressure down here to the south. Luckily, if you want to call that luckily, no big earthquake striking there, instead volcanic eruptions, which means the area to the north should show compensation movement based upon the fact that it's been silent. There's been a lot of movement to the south at the volcano, and the excessive pressure coming from the west, and the deep earthquakes that have happened over the last several days, again indicated by the height off the planet. So all this movement down below the Pacific, deep down below, pushing up below the entire plate, displacing the lava and magma chambers at the different volcanoes around the entire plate. To the north of this movement, you can already see that it's already been clustered out with a series of 5.0 earthquakes. And the area directly in the center would be the area that will finally show that one big large earthquake. Again, the area right in the center of all this cluster of movement. So let's take a quick look. That narrows it down to, let's say, Ecuador, Nicaragua, somewhere right in here in this small little 2 to 3 country region, right in here, will show movement in the near term in the next 7 days, and that's based upon the other movement that's happened to the south, to the north, and to the west. Hopefully I'm wrong on some of this stuff. The other areas that I don't normally cover, don't normally cover Africa, don't normally cover Antarctica or down here to the south, the Solomon Sea, Solomon Islands. Also don't normally cover Canada. Again, we're talking about sparsely populated areas, and the Canadians kind of keep their feeds to themselves. There's no way for me to get their feeds on here. We could go check the charts, but I can tell you this. The areas in Canada, the areas up here to the north, only show movement after we see movement down here to the south. So you'll see movement up here, in the northwest, presses down here to the south, southeast, through the Midwest. Then we'll see follow-up earthquakes happen up here in the northeast. Sometimes, like in 2011, a series of 4.0 earthquakes struck right here along the eastern coast. Let me zoom in. Right here, where the split goes out to sea, right through there, a series of 4.0 earthquakes. A series of 5.0 earthquakes struck in Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Colorado at the fracking operations that you see moving here now. So, if we see 5.0 earthquakes, or upwards of high 4.0 activity start to occur here, we need to watch for the East Coast for possible larger movement. You'll remember, 2011, 5.9 struck in Virginia, caused damage to the Washington Monument, shook people up and down the East Coast. That kind of repeat event can happen again when you start to see this activity here. Will it happen over the next 7 days? Well, that's all going to depend on what happens out here in the Pacific. Are we going to see that massive earthquake event like we saw in 2011? Is it going to take another week of buildup? You'll remember in 2011, it was at least a month and a half of buildup before we saw the big one hit. I'd say we are already in at least 3 weeks. If you go watch my videos, you'll see things started to ramp up about 3 weeks ago with multiple reports of volcanoes and different earthquakes that were starting to happen. I had been focusing on other news that was happening at the time because there wasn't much earthquake activity happening. Then it started to ramp up. And now here we are. It's like the frog in the pot. So a lot of people don't realize that the water's heating up and there's nowhere to jump out. So we need to be finding a place for safety inside this boiling pot that most people don't want to even admit exists. And I'm telling you guys, we are here at that 2011 point. If we get to another couple, 2 to 3 weeks from now, and we haven't seen that big, large, upper 8, 9.0 type earthquake, then I'll be issuing a retraction, of course, and let people know that things have calmed down and that I was wrong. But we are looking at it. This activity, you could go back and watch my video from 2011, from 2 days before the big earthquake in Japan. And I did a full update where a 7.2 struck Japan 2 days before the big one. I warned everyone back then, just like I'm warning everybody right now. And if you watch the video, compare the earthquakes then to the earthquakes now. Just compare, and you will see that the earthquakes now far outnumber the earthquakes that were occurring at the same time. So we're talking March 2011, where it's April now, going into May 2015. So within a month, same basic time, you will see that it's more earthquakes now, larger earthquakes now, larger clusters now, more volcanoes erupting now. So if that holds true, then it should mean there should be a larger earthquake following. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I want you guys to be prepared. I wouldn't go into these type of updates if I didn't really want you guys to be prepared. There's no money in this. There's no fame in this. Everybody hates you when you come out. Jesus Christ. Just as I'm talking to you right now, 7.2 magnitude earthquake just struck the area that I just warned you at the start of this video. I'm going to get the video out right now, guys. Much love. Be safe. Always have an earthquake plan ready and be prepared, just in case. Hey everybody, Dutch Sense here. 4:05 a.m. now, Friday, May 1st, 2015. And instead of trying to record another video, I'm just going to add this on to the end. I went over to Facebook, made a post on this, did a full blog post. Let me take you over here and show you guys. I'll put a link down below to this. Couldn't leave the video just like that. Of course, that struck as I was talking. Now, the USGS has downgraded the earthquake to a 6.8 magnitude. You can see it here in green. And let's get the stats on this, since this will probably be where they leave it. They may bring it back up above 7.0. We never know. Here's the scientific summary. 57 kilometers deep, 6.8 magnitude. Started out as a 7.1. There was a localized tsunami warning issued just temporarily, and now they don't have anything issued. Let's just click on that to make sure. Okay, just an informational advisory. That's good. That's really good news, actually. And let's just jump back over to Earthquake 3D. And, just to have that strike while I'm talking, come on. So, in light of this new 7.0 earthquake that just struck in the shallow area following the Deeps 5 and 6.0 earthquakes, that's 2 back-to-back, let's say within 24 hours of each other, less than 24 hours of each other. 2 near 7.0 earthquakes. This one started out at 6.9. This one started out at 7.2. That averages out to near 7.0. 2 7.0 striking. And they really did strike in the same spot within 24 hours of each other. Just a few miles difference there. Not far at all. So we have since seen a 4.7 strike in the asthenosphere again. This means another 6.0 will be striking in the area west-northwest. And the way I can describe this as, it's like dropping a letter into the mail. So you mail something and it goes out, the postman takes it away. You mail something else and the postman picks it up the next day and takes it away. And those letters will always be behind each other, as long as you don't put a priority express on them, that they'll be in succession of one another. So it's going to take a day or two for the uplift to occur from down below, where these deep earthquakes are occurring, to up above. It takes a little while for the check to get in the mail up to the shallow level from the deep level, a day or two. sometimes up to 3 or 4 days. And so we have to watch. That's why I issued these 7-day forecasts, and that's what this is. So we already saw an additional 7.0 strike the area. That then resets the area again for the deep movement, and the shallow movement should also translate to compensation movement in the areas where we haven't seen any follow-up movement at all with all this activity that's happened over the last 7 days. And we've got Philippines into South Japan sitting here pretty much quiet. You might say, okay, that does go down into Indonesia as well. Well, it does. It goes down here towards Vietnam, towards Sumatra, which, again, was already named as an area that we need to watch over the next 7 days for possible movement as well. But we're watching more towards Japan. However, don't rule out this area down to the south for some kind of movement based upon this follow-up activity that struck here. This is so much for me to try to cover. One guy to try to cover all this. Are you kidding me? But I'm trying to do it, guys. So, doing the best I can. Of course, have an earthquake plan ready and be prepared. If you live anywhere around the Pacific right now, trying to get those areas nailed down so we don't, needlessly warn other people. But you'll remember in 2011, the tsunami happens. It struck in Hawaii. It caused damage on the west coast of the United States, and that was, 3,000 miles away. So it does affect everybody. Fukushima, you'll remember Fukushima, that affected the whole planet. Caused panic around the entire planet because of one nuclear reactor in one country. And there's so many countries along the borders here, and of course the areas in question, there's lots of heavy population, dense population, almost at sea level. Not many people living up in the mountains in these areas, most along the seashore in coastal cities. So this, area here, we've seen too much damage already, guys. 5,000 people died this past week. I mean, look, I know there's a lot of stuff going on in the world and riots, and which is something else we need to look into entirely, which is the correlation between all the riots and the civil unrest and the largest earthquakes to ever happen in the world, which 1960 was the world's largest earthquake down here in Chile, 9.5. So, 1960s, there's all that civil unrest and everything going on. Well, is there a connection? I don't know. Maybe people start to feel this. Maybe it has an effect on human behavior. Maybe it's just a coincidence. But this unrest trumps the civil unrest, guys. It's not going to discriminate against one or the other. It's not a cop coming to get you. We're talking about a giant wave from the tsunami that's created. People forget. 2011, there was actually people injured in the waves. A few people actually killed from the East Pacific from the tsunami from Japan. People seriously hurt when their docks, their boats, everything was washed away. Go look up California West Coast tsunami 2011, and you'll see tsunami footage from California. Everybody's forgotten about this stuff, but it could happen again. We're looking at a 2011 type event, and I think the 7.0 popping on the screen as I was talking there proves that. No exaggeration on my part at all. Being a person who covers this, the only person who covers this on YouTube in any way, shape, or form, trying to forecast, it's like a voice in the wilderness. You're a watchman on the wall, and you're trying to warn people without panicking them and by giving them good information on where to watch. I think I've done that over and over again. I hope you guys appreciate it and get the word out to the people who live in the areas that we're already watching. So, named out California, we now need to really be on watch in the areas that I've already named. Not going to get back into that. You guys can watch the front end of this video, rewatch it if you need to. Much love, be safe, have that plan dusted off, and be prepared if you live in the Pacific. It's a lot of people to get the message out to. And you don't have to have a huge amount of supplies, guys. Really, what you need to have is a good idea of your surroundings if you live in a coastal area, of where a high point is, a sturdy structure, or a high point that you can go to in case a wave comes towards you. And if there's a large earthquake, that you have the appropriate supplies set aside ahead of time to take care of yourself in the near term until some kind of stability returns to your area. Food, water, transportation, communications, self-defense. You can hit all those with maybe $100. Here in the States, on a budget prep, you can do it. Trust me, I have. And if I can do it, you can do it. For a few $100s at the most, if you want to get the water filters and that kind of stuff. If not, you know, a 24-pack of bottled water and a set aside of your extra keys and a way to turn off your natural gas in your house, or maybe some kind of survival gear to survive outside for a few days in case your house were to have some kind of damage to it to where you couldn't live in it. Those kind of things come in handy. They don't cost much beforehand, but after some kind of disaster strikes, getting your hands on them it's impossible. So just ask the people who survived the previous disasters if they wish they would have had certain supplies set aside ahead of time. And they'll all tell you, of course I wish I would have. You know, I had to wait for this help to come from so-and-so. So, much love, guys. Be safe, have an earthquake plan ready, and be prepared.